John Beaudin, Rock History Music, and we were going through today the announcement for Danny McCafferty passing away. Kind of struck me. Then again, his last album was called Last Testament in 2019, which is when we talked to Dan McCafferty. And today we were also sharing, of course, the interview we had with Pete Agnew, the last remaining member of that band, Nazareth. And now I went through, and I promised I'd go through my last interview, well, my only interview with Dan McCafferty, and found this interesting clip that I didn't know. I had no idea. I don't remember asking him about, about death. Because at the time, I guess in 2019, we were losing a lot of rock stars. So he says something interesting in the clip. We're going to wait till a few more people go on here. Hi, Kim. Always nice to have you on here, Kim. Hope you're doing okay. Love hurts and death hurts. Sire, Stamey, you've been on, Sire Stamey, you've been on here before. Thank you. So I'd like to share this clip, and I didn't do it for, I'll use it when he's dead. You don't really do that. And I have a friend who asks that. He does these videos as well, and he asks it in a way that, I ask some artists, okay, are you watching the clock? You've probably heard me say this because we do a lot of interviews on this channel. So I'll ask an artist, are you watching the clock? Are you making the best use of your time? Right? I don't know how much I have left. This might be my last broadcast. Sorry, I just had a bath and I'm itchy. But I'll ask him, are you doing your best work? Are you trying to do your best work? And since he released an album, he was talking about that a little bit. We've got a few more people coming on, but we'll just wait to put the broadcast on. And he answered me in a way that, make every day count. Like time waits for no man, as the quote says on the banner. Kim, hi. We also lost Jeff Cook of Alabama. Oh, I didn't know that. Pastor, hello, good memories. They're old songs. True, Kim Trickle, doing fine, thank you. Jimmy James, one of the best, rest in peace. Neutral 69, hi John, yo John, hope that you had a good nap. I didn't nap, I just took a hot bath, I just had to deprogram. Sometimes I'll go, and I don't want to make this about me, but sometimes I'll be going so fast doing these videos that I'll sit down and watch something on TV that's stressless, and I'll realize I'm very stressed out. And I'll realize, I'm getting into that point. I mean, I'm one of those guys who've had to take antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills a lot in my life. And I'm not ashamed of it. I should be transparent. Not everyone has to be, but I feel the need. So I just had to regroup a little bit before I came back on here. But I promise you this clip, it's not the easiest clip to hear. It's a phoner. And if I remember correctly, he still lives in Scotland. I don't know, but he was not close, and it was just a phone call. But we have a lot of background pictures. Itchy after a bath? It should be the opposite. I've always been that way. I think it's the soap. We have one of those baths where you press the button and, the jets come on. It's an older one, but it came with the house, so there you go. Are we ready for the first clip? There are 3, and 26 people are on, so thank you. When we were making the announcement of his passing, I mean, people were just jumping on like crazy because we have this feeling when we lose our heroes. I understand why people sometimes come on here and say, oh, come on, they're just rock stars, who cares? But that nullifies most people who are watching because they do care. He did make a difference. Thank you. I'll use bath salts. Neutral, the best singer is who you like the best. Like not necessarily the best. Like people always say, oh, the Beatles are the best band. Some of those people who say that are not even Beatles fans. So there's two schools of thought as far as who's the best singer. Who do I think? Who's my favorite best singer? Elton John. Bruce Hornsby, Elton John, Mark Cohn, Joseph Williams, Bobby Kimball, Steve Perry, Brad Delp of Boston. But you get it. And you asked again, best male singer, Ronnie James Dio, rest in peace. Yes, one of the good ones. He contributed a lot to Black Sabbath. So, are we ready for the first clip? It's cryptic listening to someone who has just died, and they themselves are talking about death. But at the time in 2019, when in October, just before all hell broke loose with COVID, I guess, a lot of people were dying, and he had just released an album called Last Testament. Now, I didn't check before, I should have, but as far as I know, we don't have details on his passing yet. But, when you're his age, anything can happen. So let me play you the first clip. We're going to go with him talking about the album Hair of the Dog and Love Hurts. We're going to talk about his retirement in 2013. We're going to talk about his thoughts about retiring and leaving Nazareth. And then the last quote is going to be talking about death. I'll be coming in between the clips. And sorry about the quality. I've tried to put as much treble as I could on there because it was quite muffled, and we had to bring the high end up. So here we go. Dan McCafferty talking about the heyday 1975.
Whose idea was it to put the Birds So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star in there?
Well, I can't remember exactly who said it, but I got a nod of agreement from everyone for obvious reasons. Because there's a bit of band being on the road. And what makes you want to go on the road? Because you want to be a rock and roll star. That's why. Yeah. And that was just a bit of honesty, really, to be honest.
With Love Hurts, did you ever get? I mean, that was such a big song, and that was such with the Hair of the Dog was such a big album. But did you ever get any setback on that song? Because did anyone ever tell you, oh my God, Nazareth is selling out? Because that still sounded like Nazareth to me.
I think the only comment, the only sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, damage it did to us, and it did no damage at all, really. But because Love Hurts, at the time it was AM and FM radio, well, we found we couldn't get any more tracks played on AM radio apart from Love Hurts. You know what I mean? Because they were all a bit too hardcore or hard for the AM radio. But that's about the only downside of that song. Apart from that, I just love it to death. And I still think it's the best version of Love Hurts.
I think it's the best version too. But I can understand him being worried about, because Pete Agnew this afternoon, when we put that clip up, the bass player, the last remaining member in the band, had said that was like one of the big first rock ballads out there, and it wasn't even. It was meant to be a B-side. It certainly wasn't a B-side. It brought the band to a lot of people. So I hope you could understand the basis of that. It's the quality of the song and his accent. You can't help that. His accent, it's the way he talks, right? But the first time we put the interview up, we got a lot of flack from people saying, why didn't you transcribe it? It takes hours to transcribe something, and it's difficult. David Smith said, rest in peace, Dan. Your music will live on forever. Pastor Love Hurts. I was an adolescent back then. Matt Lidioff. Long live Nazareth. Neutral 69. Who would you think? I don't know. That it's best female singer. To me, it was Joni Mitchell, and I love Joni Mitchell, but that's a little off topic. But we're going to play you another clip because, believe it or not, I got more work to do tonight, and working on Today in History and working on finishing the Alan Parsons Project interview that we have on this channel. The whole interview will go on Rock History Book. It's a long story why we have this two different things, but we're going to talk about his retirement now. Yeah, this is Dan McCafferty in 2019 promoting his Last Testament. Interesting title for an album. I don't know if he knew or he was sending out a message, but when someone says Last Testament, Last Will and Testament, here we go.
When you retired in 2013, were you, I know it was for health reasons as well, but at that point, were you ever thinking, well, I may revisit music? Or what was your thought form when you left Nazareth?
I was just sad. It's like I couldn't sing for an hour and a half anymore. I had to leave the band I'd had all my life. So I was a bit sad. But then life goes on. You've just got to deal, play with the cards you're dealt.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And, I stopped feeling sorry for myself and got on with it,
with the solo album, it's sort of like a blank slate almost. And I know that you were working with Carol, but there's a lot of different styles, which is one of the reasons I love this project so much, because we get to hear you playing so many different types of music, whereas Nazareth was pretty much straight ahead rock. Was it always that way?
Yeah, it was. I mean, because Nazareth was a beast. Nazareth was an animal that needed fed, you know what I mean? And we had to feed it. And I loved doing it, don't get me wrong. But with this album, it was a case of there were no rules, you know? And what I really did not want to do was make a really cheap Son of Nazareth album, you know what I mean? I didn't want to do a 5-cent version of Nas, which would have been awful.
So, when he did the album, he didn't want a sort of a weak down Son of Nazareth album. There are some rockers on Last Testament. And again, that title says a lot, doesn't it? In 2019, he released that album. I love the record because I heard different sides of Dan McCafferty. And like I said, it was like similar to listening to Robert Plant sing with Alison Krauss. By the way, Ronnie Parker, great comment. We definitely care. They're on the posts. They're on the posters on our walls. The iron-ons on our T-shirts. Remember iron-ons? Wow. And the music on our albums. Rock and roll forever. Well said. Thank you. A neutral 6. Okay, Aretha is your pick for female singer. Let's try to stay on topic though. Thanks for all the folks who came on. We're going to. This was at the end of the interview, the clip where we've been teasing here, the end of the interview where I was just having to do another, I don't know what it was, but I did an obituary right after I got off, or a tribute as I call them, right after I got off the phone with him. Someone had emailed me and it was on my mind. Not that I want to make excuses for it. It's a normal thing to ask someone, an aging rock star, about how they feel about death. And this is what he told me. Let me just set this up. Dan McCafferty in October of 2019, talking about, well, the big D word.
How do you feel about, you had your health issues. Listen, I'm a lot younger than you, but I even think about this stuff. I'm turning 60 in a few months. But we're losing a lot of rock stars.
Well, time goes on, my man. Like I say, it was my 73rd birthday on Tuesday. So, time and tide waits for no man. And I didn't actually live the life of an athlete. So I didn't see myself any favours, I'm going to be honest. But hey, you can play with the cards you're built on, like I say.
Yeah.
And enjoy your life, enjoy your family, enjoy your friends. Just enjoy yourself. And try and do something you love doing. For God's sake, do something you love doing.
Enjoy your life, enjoy your family, try to do something you love. Time waits for no man. Basically, he says, get on with it. Do something you really love. Just sort of get off the pot. Find it. Great words of wisdom from a man who, well, we lost him today. And I'm not, I look back and I listen to a lot of their music today. I'm sure you have. Someone was asking in the last broadcast that you think their sales will go up. It always does, no matter what. People at the record companies are already probably thinking about, well, this is a business, So Randy Perfecto, awesome, sir. Saw them in the 70s and they rocked. Love your knowledge of old school. I appreciate that. Thank you. And Neutral 69 says, agreed, Gene. Gene says Nazareth was so underrated. And they kind of were, It's been a really different day. This morning, Pete Agnew released a statement. He said, Dan died at 12:40 today. This is the saddest announcement I ever had to make. Marianne and the family had lost a wonderful, loving husband and father. I have lost my best friend. Remember, they were friends since they were tiny kids. And the world lost one of the greatest singers who ever lived. They formed the band in 1968, but things didn't get really cooking for them till a lot later. I mean, the breakthrough, let me just get it on here. Here we go. There we go. By 71, they released their first album, self-titled album, and Exercises the following year in 72. But things cooked, and I mean, their first big album went platinum, Razamanaz, that very fast song, remember? And that was 73, and they released 2 albums in 73. Loud and Proud was there, and it's not bad when you're being produced by Roger Glover of Deep Purple. That kind of said something. Rampant kind of went down. Rampant in 74 went gold. It's still gold. Most bands never get a gold album. By 75, Hair of the Dog was the big album, and then the Greatest Hits, which were both huge records. Hair of the Dog and Love Hurts on Hair of the Dog, which Love Hurts wasn't even supposed to be on there. This afternoon, you might want to listen to the other one. That interview is a lot clearer with Pete Agnew. You can really hear him. You can tell what he's saying. This was a phoner, and it was bad quality phoner. The ones with Pete were Zoom calls, so we could really understand what he was saying. So I almost asked for the interview with Dan McCafferty again because the quality was so bad, but I don't think he's into technology, right? So there you go. Close Enough for Rock and Roll is probably one of my favorite albums because of the opening sort of rock circus song, which is called Telegram. Part 1 is On Your Way. Part 2, So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, the Birds piece. Soundcheck Part 3 and Part 4 is Here We Go Again. And Vancouver Shakedown, I always like that song. Just kind of like a pop song. And of course, Malice in Wonderland had Holiday in 1980. I'm pretty sure that's the first tour I saw. Then I saw him in a smaller venue after that. Let me just get to some of your comments. Thanks for joining on tonight. I appreciate that. Pastor, Love Hurts for me personally on the same page together with Rod Stewart's I Am Sailing. Yeah. And 10cc's I'm Not in Love. Neutral 69. Music now isn't that good compared to the 80s and before. It's probably not, but there's still a lot of good music out there. Randy Perfecto. We do care because they had an impact on our lives. Yeah, growing up. Ronald Belford Scott Bon Scott, yeah. Yeah, I enjoy, in the daytime on our sister station, Neutral, we've got to stay on topic. I enjoy, in the daytime, doing these history stories on Rock History Book. I learn a lot. There's this misconception with doing this sort of thing where everyone thinks that their favorite YouTuber somehow has all that knowledge in their head. I mean, you can tell when I'm talking to you, I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at a script. And I've spent 40 years studying music and music history, and that's what I do. But I don't know everything. And none of those guys do either. And we all have to, I mentioned this in a few broadcasts today where there was a guy who got on, I used to be doing Today in History, like everything. That album was released on this day. That guy was born. This happened on this day. Like the big thing. He got mad at me because he says, "Oh, you're a poser because you're reading off a script." Reading off a script, it's Today in History. You have to read off a script. Unless you have a photographic memory, you're not going to remember all those dates. It's impossible. Or unless you're Mary Lou Henner. Remember, Mary Lou Henner can remember everything she's done her whole life. There's a name for it. I forget what she has. Okay. Patch Store, yes, as I said, I was adolescent back then. Those songs I mentioned really hit me. Well, they do, and I'll say it one last time tonight. I promise not to say it again. With someone passing like this, it reminds us of us walking into a record store in the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, depending upon what your age is, and being excited. And Dan McCafferty was one of those reasons. Daryl Sweet, the drummer, is one of those reasons, right? Manny Charlton, who died in July. Daryl Sweet died in 1999. That's the reason. They gave us a reason to walk into a record store and get excited and having a sense of hope. I always felt hope when I walked into a record store. I felt that I was going to find something that was going to make my life a lot better. I mean, where can you walk and you get excited like that? And my wife had to explain it to me. She says, every time I go to Winners or Marshalls, I get like that. I said, well, then you understand. I don't going into those stores, right? Some people feel that when they go into the Apple store, they get all excited. Whatever it is, for me, and I think a lot of you, walking into a store was really exciting. And the man we lost today was one of those reasons. And I certainly bought a lot of their albums. Razum and Az would have been probably the first one, but I didn't discover them till the Greatest Hits came out, and my sister's boyfriend told me about the band, and I went, oh, remember? Someone would tell us about a band, and we'd go, oh, I know that. I know those guys. I just didn't put a name to it. Oh, that's Nazareth. Oh, okay, Razum and Az. Well, I want to buy that one. I want to buy the first. And I realized later it wasn't the first. It was the third album. But it was the first big album, and it came out and it went platinum. So it's kind of a cool thing. All the stories, we all have our each individual stories about this kind of music. And it's sad when we lose someone because it's a part of ourselves, right? It's a part of our youth. And even though, I mean, I've been lucky. I've talked to Pete Agnew twice. I talked to Dan McCafferty once. I talk to rock stars all the time. I talk to musicians all the time. But I feel as sad when we lose them. It's a difficult thing. Okay. Comments. Yes, as I said, adolescent. Patchter, I don't know if that J is silent. Moody Blues, Night in White Satin, maybe 2, but I think a few years older. Yeah, Nights in White Satin was. Neutral, 69. Was Nazareth more 80s and 70s? They were both. They were both. They started, as I said, in 68, didn't have a hit till the early 70s, and then I'll go through it for you. They formed in, like I said, I have to look at my notes to make sure I'm right. 68. They released an album in 71 that didn't do anything called Nazareth. I'm sorry. Following a year, released Exercises, but then they had a platinum album, 73, with Razum and Az, and another platinum album with Loud and Proud. That's 1973. That was a pretty cool time in music. Rampant only went gold, but it's still a hit. 75, they had their biggest year with Hair of the Dog, and then they had a Greatest Hits, and they both sold incredibly. Not as much in the U.S., but the U.S. slowly caught up, and then released a whole bunch of albums that charted all over the world. Close Enough for Rock and Roll, Playing the Game. This is 76. Expect No Mercy in 77. The following 2 years later, No Means City. Malice in Wonderland, which had a hit called Holiday. The Fool Circle, and that was their last big charting. But interestingly, as of like 82, most of the charting albums for Nazareth were in Europe, not in North America, US or Canada. It just wasn't there. So that answers your question, I hope. But thanks for coming on. You don't seem like you know a lot about the band, but you still came on to find out. So thank you. Nicole Keenan, the guitar in Love Hurts always reminds me of Santo and Johnny's Sleepwalk. Oh, yeah. Beautiful song. Hayes Anderson, I only started listening to them about 10 years ago, but I am a huge Nazareth fan. Thanks, Hayes, for coming on. Ruben Kincaid, oh, man, this is sad news. Very much. Patchter, that guitar almost sounds like a violin. It has a weird feeling. That's Manny Charlton. The other guitarist I know that could pull that off is Brian May and Tom Scholz. Brian May of Queen, Tom Scholz of Boston. Ruben Kincaid. In the 80s and 90s, when I was working for a record distributor, I discovered their entire catalog. Very cool. Ruben, Hayes Anderson. I like to compare Nazareth and Thin Lizzy. Like Thin Lizzy was their bigger brother. I only had Jailbreak for Thin Lizzy and Johnny and the Fox. What was that album called? I didn't like that one as much, and I might have gotten another one. And, I had their live album as well. Scott, rest in peace, Dan. Great singer. I sang in a band back in the day. We covered Night Woman, a somewhat challenging vocal, but I would have never attempted Love Hurts, Middle Eight Through the Stratosphere. Bob's Place, rest in peace, Dan. By the way, for anyone who missed the clip, we placed it already. When this clip ends, you'll get a chance to listen to the clips. They're hard to hear because of his accent, and it's a phoner. We have lots of pictures running while he talks. Acabe Busby, Dan McCafferty was a terrific vocalist. Would recommend Nazareth's performance on Spotlight in Australia. His voice was one for the ages. Rest in peace. Thank you for that. Ruben Kincaid, they toured so extensively in Canada every year, right up to 2010s. Yeah, I only saw them twice. Saw them in Northlands Coliseum, and I saw them in Edmonton again in a smaller venue, but not that much smaller. Well, it's Northlands Coliseum. It's where the Oilers used to play. It was quite a bit smaller, but it was still a pretty good venue. That's what I meant. No, Madonna's Holiday is a completely different song. Yes, he was from Scotland. And I don't know, I'm guessing he still lived there. There's no cause of death, by the way. Because of the quality of that interview I just played. It was great telling him, man to man, Dan, I'm so glad you released this album. I don't know if he knew. He had COPD. He had it pretty bad. But No Cause of Death has been released. And I don't know if he knew that his days were numbered when he released an album called Last Testament. So, Last Will and Testament. So I would think there was a reason for releasing the album and calling the album that. And I found him very, very charming. But I found him to be an introspective man, but a no bull kind of guy. He seemed to know who he was. But you have to. Well, no, you don't have to. No, I shouldn't say that. I've talked to older rock stars sometimes, and I think some of them are a little silly. But it could be old man silly. That happens to a lot of people, where they don't sweat anymore, the small stuff. I seldom meet rude rock stars. So there you go. Comments. Jonathan Michael Trevari. Love the keeping if good music alive on this channel. Oh, thank you. Ruben Kincaid. On my list of amazing, distinctive voices, Dan is on the top 10 for sure. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. Hayes Anderson. Does anyone know the story behind the cover of their album, The Catch, from 1984? It's not before. Hold on, let me look it up. I don't recognize the name. Hold on. Oh yeah, The Catch. There it is. Oh, it's there. Yeah, I have it behind me. It's behind me. It hasn't come up, but I know it's there because I remember putting it on there. And this is my third on Dan McCafferty. I wanted to leave the third one as a conversation with him, but it's going to come up behind me. By the way, I did the green screen backdrop when I talked to Pete Agnew the first time, which was, he never comes on screen. He doesn't want to come on screen. And then I talked to him. Then I talked to Dan McCafferty, and I used the same one because they didn't come on screen. So I'm thinking I have to put something on screen. And everyone loves it when you put albums on. It's just a thing that people just, and they're all in order, by the way. These albums, you can tell they're in order. So the Catch wouldn't be on here. It probably isn't another one. Oh, might be coming up. Might be coming up soon. But anyway, it is in the back. So there you have it. If you missed the conversation that I had with Dan, all the other stuff that I talked about with Dan were concerning Last Testament, the album. And it's YouTube is a funny animal because we can't play music. Some people do, but you always have a chance of losing your channel. We have 104,000 subscribers on this channel. We don't want to lose our channel. It means an awful lot to us. The older albums are coming up on top now. The newer ones, I should say, not the older ones. But The Catch is on there. Because we went through, when I do these backdrops, I try to put as many of the albums as I can. Some people don't like the green screen thing. We have a lot of lights around me, which is one of the reasons why we don't have the green around my face or my head, because we're really, really well lit. Much like we're as bright here as a TV station would be. It's really, really, really bright in this room, even though my face still shows a little shade. So there you have it. I'm going to check your comments one more, and then I'm going to go work on The Day Never Ends here at Today in History. Okay. I know one guy who reminds me of Dan's voice. Don't laugh. Sammy Hagar. Oh, Hayes Anderson. Okay, there it is. I stand corrected. Oh, you saw it? Okay, Reuben Kincaid. The live version of the cover of Shapes of Things to Come is one of the heaviest vocals ever recorded. Cool. Randy Perfecto. Love your show, sir. You make us old rockers realize how important these people influenced us. Your Moxie and April Wine shows keep me in tune. Continuing success and happiness, my friend. Thank you. Hey, Randy, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Tassos Pavlidis. This Flight Tonight was my favorite song. It influenced a lot of people, didn't it? That guitar, Manny Charlton's guitar. I used to open my music breaks at work with the masterpiece around 6 p.m. when most employees had left. And I played it very loud on the PC speakers. Bob's Place. Jeff Cook of Alabama died today. Thank you. We don't do a lot of country, but when a big person in music dies, yeah. Hayes Anderson, rest in peace. Reuben Kincaid. Cinema was a weird album, but a title track was awesome. And Neutral 69 says, rest in peace, Dan McCafferty. Yeah. And thank you for giving us so much. It's a lot of work when hold on, let me look at it again. They released 25 studio albums, 6 live albums. Dan wasn't on all those albums because he quit in 2013. Compilation album 7, EPs 2. It's a lot. That's a heck of a body of work. You know, you're kind of dedicated to your craft. But in the clip that we shared about Dan, when I asked him, man, a lot of rock stars are dying, he basically said, yeah, then get to it and get to what you're meant to do in your life. As the title says, let me put it up. Oops. Oh, I hate when it does that. Well, I'll leave it on there because looking at the albums are a lot better. You know, time waits for no man. What do you want to do with your life? Just get to it. That's what he says. He says he retired because he wanted to spend more time with his family. He felt guilty, felt depressed after he retired. He got over himself. He kind of got on with it and released, as I mentioned before, in October 2019, Last Testament. We lost Daryl Sweet in 99. We lost Manny Charlton in July. And then today we lost Dan McCafferty. And Pete Agnew's the last remaining member, and he's the one that released the news today that Dan McCafferty had passed on. So I'll just one more swing at the comments, and then I will. Did I lose? No. Yeah, good. We're still on with that camera. I have problems with the DSLR camera coming on. I'm not sure why. No Mean City was a great album from Reuben Kincaid. It was. David May, This Flight Tonight, written by Canadian Joni Mitchell. Indeed. Hayes Anderson, I tried to sing like Dan earlier today and immediately put a stop to that. I don't know anyone that sounded like him. Well, some people will look at Bon Scott, Brian Johnson, in that ilk, right, of the big voices like that. Max Brand, sad loss of rock and roll. Rest in peace, Dan. Thank you, Max. Neutral 69. Damn, drank and smoked, not good. Yeah, well, someone had said that when he saw them, Dan had some scotch on the side during the concert. And he did smoke, and he did have COPD. You know, the bad habits thing, it's really easy, and I'm not saying you're doing that, but the bad habits thing is, I think everyone, Reuben Kincaid, Razmanaz, what a fast song. Everyone's got bad habits. Every family's got bad habits. Some families have bad people, but I don't know. You know, he if he had really, really bad habits, he lived for a long time, right? So there you go. A cross between Rod Stewart and Brian Johnson, Max Brand. Yeah. Just a distinctive voice where when you heard Dan McCafferty, you knew it was him. You know, and that says something about him. Reuben Kincaid lived by the sword. He still made it to his 70s. There you go. 76. There you go, guys. If you have any other questions, put them on. Please like our video. You're not liking the fact that he died. You're just liking the fact that we're reporting on it. We featured an interview with with Dan talking about death. And I'll paraphrase it. He just said, get to it, do your work, find something you love and do it. Remember when I think it was the 80s, Margaret Atwood said, why is it that people say, when I retire, I'm going to write the great American novel or the great Canadian novel, in her case? She's, why are you waiting? Do it now. And that always stuck with me. And I've never been good at that. I'm a procrastinator. Shannon, my wife, is one of those people who does her homework. She used to do her homework on Friday night. She remembers everything. She's got an amazing memory, and she likes getting things done. She likes closing the file. Sorry, I just spit on my microphone. Max Brand. This unfortunately caused him in his life had stayed healthy, he'd still be here. Yeah, he could be. We don't know the official cause, but Ruben Kincaid, rest in peace, Dan, and thanks for breaking this news, John. Thank you for coming on here. If you want to support the channel, there are links in the description. You can PayPal us. You can join our Patreon. You can buy a T-shirt. You can like the video. You can subscribe to our channel. All those nice things. And I say this a lot, but I love you guys. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for talking about rock and roll with me. We come on here almost every single day. And it's important to us to do this work. Chad says, you need to play Dying Breed. It's an amazing song. I can't play music on here because we'll lose our channel. The people who do are always risking losing their channel. Take good care, guys.